like to invite to the podium here Christopher Kujalowicz, or maybe, hi Christopher, come in. And as you can see, he's really very much connected with Loyola. He's actually a third-year medical student here in Loyola. And he's going to be talking to you about how to get into medical school in the United States.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Brukash. Thanks for the introduction. So once again, my name is Chris Kujalowicz. I'm a third year right here at Stritch at Loyola, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about what you do after you've taken your MCAT, you've taken your classes, you're all ready to go. How do you get into medical school? So what we're going to talk about, a couple different things. We're going to review the dreaded statistics. We're going to talk about all the numbers, everything that we're seeing. I have the most current statistics from the 2023 cycle, so we'll kind of go over all that together. We'll look at kind of what the anatomy of an applicant looks like, what are the things that you should be doing, what you could be doing, etc. The actual process and timeline of applying, and then tips and tricks, insider info, things like that. So kind of an important thing that I want to remind everybody of to consider throughout this process is your why. Why are you doing medicine? Why are you applying? What is it that drives you to do this? Because this is, like we talked about earlier today, this is a long process. There's hard days, there's good days. You want to be remembering what's pushing you through all of these difficult things. And this is kind of what you fall back on throughout the entire process. When things get tough, when things get hard, remember your why. So with that, let's see some numbers, let's get into the statistics, and let's have a look. So this is from the AAMC 2023 application cycle. There were 55,000 applicants to medical school. This is everybody applying MD US schools. As you can see, about 22,000 students actually matriculated, which means that they were accepted and they moved on to that next stage of enrolling in med school. That's kind of scary. That's about a 50% matriculation rate. So like we talked about, it's a very stiff competition, but we're going to talk about kind of all the things that make up a good applicant and things that you can do to maximize your chances. One of those things here we see also the average number of programs that people apply to. By casting a broad net, you can be among that 22,000 that does matriculate. So here's some more numbers. We talked a little bit about MCAT, and as well as our GPA. So here's kind of a breakdown of the applicant GPAs in MCAT versus the matriculating. As you can see, students that matriculated did just a little order of magnitude above the regular applicants. So this is something to keep in mind. Like we talked about, that 510 MCAT, that's kind of our cutoff, kind of our sweet spot for where we want to be above for MD schools. 511.9 now is kind of the average matriculant score for the 2023 cycle. So that kind of underscores the importance of the MCAT. And then GPA as well. We have it broken down by science, non-science, and cumulative. So it's easy to say just do as good as you can, but this is also kind of a breakdown of what we're seeing during this cycle. Here, again, a very busy slide. If you guys want to go on the AAMC website, these are the 2023 statistics. I'll point out up here, this is our highest echelon of applicants. This is our perfect MCAT score and our perfect GPA. But you'll notice only about 80% of students from that category still get in and matriculate to a school. Why is that? What is that 20% that aren't getting in? Well, that 20% is all of the rest of the parts of your application that we're going to be talking about today. There's people that can score perfect on their MCAT, they have a fantastic GPA, but they still can't land it. It's because there's things outside of these scores that are responsible for you getting into medical school. I also have it broken down kind of, you can look at the percentages as you kind of go down through. They do dwindle kind of as you get down to that 500 mark that we were talking about earlier. So that's kind of a synopsis of your MCAT versus your GPA. I'll also talk about Loyola since we're here today. We talked a little bit earlier about how Loyola regularly gets very, very high numbers in applications. My year, the class of 2024, we had 14,000 applications. In 2019, Loyola was actually the most applied to medical school. It was the most popular medical school in the AAMC with 15,000 applications. Is it because it's the #1 school in the nation? I think yes, but I'm biased because I go here. Here's a breakdown as well of MCAT, GPA, and our class size. So this is kind of what I like to keep as a benchmark. A school like this is kind of the GPA, MCAT, et cetera, requirements that we see. So let's talk about everything outside of the numbers. What kind of goes into your application into medical school? There's kind of 6 key tenets that I like to talk about. Number 1 is your personal statement. We'll chat about that in just a sec, but this is your chance to show who you are, why you're applying to medicine, and it gives committees a chance to look past the numbers and see who you are as an applicant. Letters of recommendation, you'll be seeking letters of rec throughout your medical school, but these are a requirement to apply. Leadership experiences, research, volunteering, and your application essays are important as well. A quote that I like to talk about, I did a talk on this on medical school admissions in college as well, and this is kind of one thing that I've learned throughout the process is focus less on the bullet list of things that you need to do, kind of all those experiences that we talked about earlier, and focus more on the type of physician you want to be, who you want to become. This will lead you to seek experiences that are more meaningful to you, are more interesting to talk about in interviews and on the application trail, and overall will help you become a better physician and the best physician that you can be. So your personal statement. This is a brief, concise statement highlighting why it is you want to go to medicine. This is kind of that why medicine that we talked about earlier. This is a great way to show who you are outside of medicine, what drove you to apply, what made you want to become a doctor in the first place. It's important with this to show that you do have knowledge of the medical field. You can talk about experiences that you've had in the past. I talked about my family and people that were sick in my family and how that kind of shaped my understanding of the field and why I wanted to go into it. There is a great chance here to kind of stand out and be more than just your numbers and more than your CV and resume. But it's also important to be concise because if you think about it, application readers are going through hundreds of these in a cycle, so you want to stand out and you want to be very punchy and concise with your language. I also highly recommend drafting as much as possible. Have your friends read it, your peers applying into medicine, mom, dad, babcia, dziadek, get everybody on board, have them read through this. Having a fresh set of eyes on this is always a super helpful way to maximize what you're saying and make sure that it flows. Your letters of recommendation. This can be tricky because sometimes when we're in classes, the only time we see our professors is office hours. But there's ways to find letter writers who know you, who are going to vouch for you and make your application stand out. Timing is one of the biggest things. Identifying who's going to write your letter early is one of the easiest ways to make sure that you have all the letters on time and you have all the correct letters. The quantity, some schools don't have a limit, others do set a limit of 3 to 5 letters that you can get, and then many schools will have you choose 3 letters to send in. But number 1, above all of this, is the quality of letters that are going to be put forward. You want to make sure that this isn't just some professor that's saying, this student showed up to class, he scored pretty well, he was present and I know him, because that's every single person applying in the AMC. You want a person that'll write for you that'll say, this is the highest echelon of students I've ever worked with. This is somebody who's passionate about their work and is going to make a phenomenal physician. So how do you identify those people? There's a variety of different potential letter writers that you can find. Besides the professors that we talked about, there's also TAs, research PIs, people that you work with on a day-to-day basis that can say, hey, this person showed up but did everything they could to make sure the day was smooth. They always got their work done and they're very passionate. So there's a variety of different departmental, so people either in your major or in the science department, or outside of that, non-departmental. So I asked my research advisor to write me one, as long as it's somebody that's personal and can speak to your talents. So leadership is another big one. There's a variety of ways to stand out here, but my biggest trick and tip for this is to pick experiences that you personally are passionate about. When I was interviewing, all they wanted to talk about were the things I was doing outside of medicine. Everybody does research, everybody does shadowing. They want to know what keeps you alive outside of medicine, what makes you excited, and how are you going to survive medical school, right? When things get really hard, what do you do to keep yourself occupied? Research, it is tricky to get research as an undergraduate. I think most medical schools understand that. What they want to see is that you've put forward some effort into learning the basic sciences. If you have a project that's ongoing, that's a phenomenal way to say, hey, I'm interested in research, and I know how to start a project, commit to it, and finish it out. The biggest thing they're looking for is just being able to commit to a project over a long period of time. Volunteering is a great way to show medical school admissions committees what you care about, what disparities you see in the healthcare field, and what you want to address personally. Great ways to show that you know how to volunteer are not just showing up for that one blood drive that one time, organizing a blood drive and helping coordinate donations throughout your county, for example, is a way better way to show, hey, I'm interested in this field, and I know how to commit a variety of different resources to achieve one goal. So volunteering is another great way to stand out on your application. What does the process of applying actually look like? Your whole app cycle is about 13 months-ish, depending on kind of where you put your MCAT, where you start, and then when you hear back. The prep stage, kind of everything we've talked about so far, your MCAT, your grades, your classes, things like that. There's also something called the Casper exam that you take during this phase. Me included and all of my peers, we didn't know what it was until the week of, but it's a situational awareness and emotional intelligence exam. It's just kind of a benchmark for schools to know kind of how you think and how you problem solve. That all kind of goes during this first prep stage. Your second stage is going to be your AMCAS, your primary applications. You can think of this as kind of the common app of medical school. This will open up around May time. You'll be able to fill this out, submit it in June, and then your secondaries come out. This is something that I was not expecting during my medical application journey. Schools, once they receive that kind of common app primary, they will send you individual secondaries that then you fill out. They're all school specific. My biggest trick for this is to make sure you fill them out as soon as you get them, because some of the interview cycles are rolling admissions for those interviews. So as soon as you get that secondary invite in your mailbox, go ahead and fill that out, send it back out. That's kind of the trick into getting early interviews throughout your season. And then interviews, that's kind of your big day to show, you know, the school is interested in you, they've vetted you, they think that you're a great candidate on paper, they want to know more about you and see kind of how you stand up to all of that praise in person. Once you've got the interview, you can kind of rest assured, you know, don't let your guard down yet because you're not accepted, but the school's very interested in you and they want to see if you'd be a good fit for their school. We talked about location as well. We had a great presentation on that earlier, but there's a variety of different ways you can go about this and different processes. In the US, like we talked about, 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school. In Poland and abroad, kind of either the graduate track or kind of that 6-year through, and then Caribbean schools as well, kind of following that 4 and 4. There's lots of pros and cons to this. Like we talked about, you can do your own research and kind of figure out what's the best fit for you. But those are kind of our primary options and the tips and tricks into getting into medical school. So thank you guys so much. I'll be around after for questions. Thank you.